Camila leaned back in the leather chair across from me and laughed aloud enough for everyone in the small conference room to hear. No lawyer? You lose, Alina. This is going to be over before it even starts. Her attorney, a tall man in a sharp gray suit, smiles like he had already won. He didn't even try to hide it. I sat there alone in my side of the long table, holding nothing but a thin folder and the last bit of dignity I had left. Welcome back to Polite Revenge Stories, quiet stories about ordinary people who stop apologizing for taking up space. If you've ever been mocked by your own family in a room full of lawyers because they thought you had nothing left to fight with, this one's for you. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Alina Morales, and this is the story of how my sister laughed in my face when she thought I couldn't afford a lawyer, and how her own attorney ended up looking terrified 30 minutes later. Our parents died 6 months ago in a car accident on the highway outside Boise, Idaho. They were only 62. It was sudden, cruel, and left everything in chaos. My father had always been careful with money. He had a small life insurance policy and the house we grew up in. But the real surprise came when we sat down with their estate lawyer 2 weeks after the funeral. Everything, the house, the savings, even their old truck, had been left to me. Not split between us, not given to Camila. All of it to me. The lawyer explained it simply. I was the one who moved back to Boise 3 years ago when Mom got sick. I was the one who took care of her during chemo, drove Dad to his doctor appointments, cooked their meals, and handled their bills when things got hard. Camila had been living in Seattle, building her career, and only visited on holidays. My parents had written it clearly in their will. They wanted me to have the house because I was the one who stayed. Camila didn't take it well. At first, she cried in front of the lawyer and said it wasn't fair. Then she got angry. She accused me of manipulating our parents when they were weak. She said I had brainwashed them into cutting me out. I tried to talk to her. I told her I never asked for any of this. I even offered to split the house with her. She refused. She said she wanted everything or nothing. 2 months later, she hired a lawyer and filed to contest the will. She claimed I had used undue influence. She said our parents weren't in their right minds when they changed everything to my name. She demanded the house be sold and the money split evenly. I didn't have money for a lawyer. I was barely making ends meet teaching at the local elementary school. After paying for Mom's medical bills and Dad's funeral, my savings were gone. So I showed up to the first mediation meeting alone. That's when Camila laughed. She sat across from me in that expensive conference room, wearing a designer blouse and perfect makeup, and looked at me like I was pathetic. No lawyer, she repeated, shaking her head. Wow, Alina, you really are as broke as I thought. This is going to be easy. Her attorney, Mr. Caldwell, opened a thick folder and started laying out papers. He spoke confidently about undue influence, about how I had isolated our parents, about how the will should be thrown out. I sat there quietly, my hands folded on the table. Camila kept smiling. She thought she had already won. But what she didn't know was that 3 days earlier, I had received something in the mail. It was a thick envelope from our parents' old family lawyer, the one who had handled their affairs before they passed. Inside were documents I had never seen before. Bank statements, text messages, even a small USB drive. My hands had started shaking as I read through them, because the papers didn't just prove I hadn't manipulated anyone. They proved something much worse. Something Camila had been doing for almost 2 years before our parents died. And the moment her own lawyer saw those documents, his confident smile disappeared. The room felt smaller after Camila's laugh. Her attorney, Mr. Caldwell, was still flipping through his papers like this was just another routine case. Camila sat beside him with her arms crossed, looking at me like I was wasting everyone's time. I didn't say anything at first. Instead, I opened the thin folder I had brought with me and placed 3 documents on the table, one by one. I didn't rush. I didn't explain. I just laid them down quietly. Mr. Caldwell glanced at them, then looked back at me with mild irritation.
Miss Morales, if you have something to present, now would be the time. I slid the first paper toward him. This is a bank statement for my parents' joint account, I said. It shows regular transfers of $2,000 every month for the last 14 months before they died. All of them went to an account under my sister's name. Camila's smile faltered for half a second. Mr. Caldwell picked up the paper and scanned it. His eyebrows pulled together slightly. I placed the second document down. This is a text message thread between my sister and my father, dated 8 months before the accident. In it, she's asking him to change the will and leave everything to her. She wrote, and I quote, "Elena is already getting the house by living there. She doesn't need the money, too. You know I'm the one who actually needs it." Camila shifted in her chair. Mr. Caldwell's eyes moved faster across the page now. I placed the third, most important document. This is a copy of an email my sister sent to a real estate agent 3 weeks before our parents died. She was already trying to get the house valued. She told the agent she expected to inherit it soon and wanted to know how fast it could be sold. The room went quiet. Mr. Caldwell slowly put the papers down. He didn't look at Camila. He looked at me. "Where did you get these?" he asked, his voice much less confident than before. "From my parents' old family lawyer," I replied. "He sent them to me 3 days ago. He said my mother had asked him to keep copies of everything in case something ever happened." Camila let out a short, sharp laugh, but it sounded forced. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Dad was confused in his last few months. He didn't know what he was doing. These messages don't prove anything." Mr. Caldwell turned his head slightly toward her. He didn't say anything, but the look on his face had changed. The easy confidence was gone. I stayed calm. "I never asked my parents to leave me anything," I said. "I moved back to take care of Mom because she was sick. I stayed because Dad needed help after she passed. I didn't manipulate anyone, but it looks like someone else was trying to." Camila's face had gone pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Miss Morales," he said to me, "I think we should take a short break. I need to speak with my client privately." I nodded and stood up. As I walked out of the conference room, I could feel Camila's eyes burning into my back. For the first time since this whole thing started, she wasn't smiling anymore. I stepped into the small waiting area outside and sat down on one of the chairs. My hands were shaking, but I kept them folded in my lap. I had spent the last 2 months feeling powerless. I had shown up today expecting to lose everything. But those documents had changed something. Camila had spent months painting me as the greedy, manipulative daughter who took advantage of our sick parents. She had told everyone I brainwashed them. She had laughed at me for not having a lawyer. But the truth was sitting on that table now. She wasn't the victim. She was the one who had been trying to steal from her parents while they were still alive. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. This wasn't over yet. I knew Camila wouldn't give up easily. She was used to getting what she wanted, but for the first time, I wasn't walking into this fight empty-handed. 10 minutes later, the conference room door opened. Mr. Caldwell stepped out. His expression was serious. "Ms. Morales," he said quietly, "can we speak for a moment?" I stood up. He glanced back toward the room, then lowered his voice. "My client is reconsidering her position," he said carefully. "She's willing to drop the case to the will, but she would like to discuss a settlement. Something fair for both of you." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I shook my head. "I don't want a settlement," I said. "I want this to be over, and I want her to understand that she can't just try to take everything from me and walk away like nothing happened." Mr. Caldwell studied me. "What exactly are you asking for?" I thought about it for a second. Then I answered. I want her to withdraw the case completely. I want a written apology for the things she said about me, and I want her to cover all the legal fees I've had to deal with because of this." He raised his eyebrows slightly. "That's quite a lot." I met his eyes. "She laughed at me today because she thought I had nothing. She thought I would just roll over and let her take what our parents left me. I'm not doing that anymore." Mr. Caldwell was quiet for a few seconds. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll speak with her," he said. As he turned to go back inside, I stopped him. "One more thing," I said. He looked at me. "Tell her," I continued, "that if she doesn't agree to all of it, I will be sending copies of those documents to every single person in our family, and I'll let them decide who the real manipulator was." Mr. Caldwell's face tightened. He didn't say anything else. He just nodded once and walked back into the room. I sat back down and waited. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was losing. I felt like I was finally in control. Mr. Caldwell came back into the waiting area after 20 minutes. His face looked tired. "She's not happy," he said simply, "but she's willing to drop the case. However, she refuses to give a written apology. She says that would make her look guilty in front of the family." I stayed seated. "Then we don't have a deal," I replied. He sighed and sat down across from me. "Ms. Morales, I understand you're angry, but dragging this out in court is going to be expensive and messy for both of you. Your sister is offering to withdraw the contest completely. You keep the house and everything else. Isn't that enough?" I looked at him for a moment. "No," I said, "because this was never just about the house. She spent months telling everyone I manipulated our dying parents. She laughed at me today because she thought I was too poor and too weak to fight back. She needs to understand that there are consequences for that."
Mr. Caldwell rubbed his forehead. "She's also offering to cover a portion of your legal costs," he added. $10,000. I almost laughed. $10,000? I repeated. "That's what she thinks my dignity is worth?" He didn't answer. I stood up. "Tell her this," I said. "She either gives me a written apology that I can show to the rest of the family, covers all my legal expenses, and withdraws the case today, or I send every document I have to our aunts, uncles, and cousins, and I'll let them decide who the real problem is." Mr. Caldwell looked at me for a long moment, then nodded and went back inside. This time he was gone for almost 40 minutes. When the door finally opened again, it wasn't just him who came out. Camila walked out behind him. Her face was red, and her eyes were sharp with anger. She stopped a few feet away from me. "You're really doing this?" she said, her voice low. "You're really going to destroy what's left of this family over a house?" I looked at her calmly. "No, Camila. You tried to destroy what was left of this family when you filed to take everything from me. I'm just refusing to let you." She stepped closer. "You always played the victim, Elena, even when we were kids. Poor Elena who stayed behind and took care of everyone. You used that to guilt Mom and Dad for years, and now you're using it again." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "I moved back because Mom was dying," I said quietly. "You were in Seattle posting vacation photos while I was taking her to chemotherapy. Don't rewrite history now." Camila's eyes flashed. "You think you're so noble," she snapped, "but you're just as greedy as everyone else. You want the house, the money, and now you want me to publicly humiliate myself with an apology. This is revenge, not justice." I met her gaze without flinching. "You laughed at me today. You told me I was going to lose because I didn't have a lawyer. You thought I was weak. Now that I'm not rolling over, you're calling it revenge?" She opened her mouth to say something, but Mr. Caldwell gently touched her arm. Camila, we should talk privately again. She pulled her arm away but didn't go back inside. Instead, she looked at me one last time. If you do this, she said, if you send those documents to the family, you'll regret it. I'll make sure everyone knows how manipulative you really are. I didn't respond. She turned and walked back into the conference room, her heels clicking loudly against the floor. Mr. Caldwell stayed behind for a moment. She's panicking, he admitted quietly. Those documents are damaging. If this goes to court and they become public, it won't just be about the will anymore. It could affect her reputation and possibly her job. I nodded slowly. I'm not the one who created those messages. She did. He looked at me for a second longer, then went back inside. I sat down again and waited. For the first time since our parents died, I wasn't afraid of losing. I was afraid of what I was becoming. Part of me still hated this, fighting with my own sister, threatening to expose her, turning what was left of our family into a battlefield. But another part of me, the part that had spent months being called a manipulator, a gold digger, and a liar, refused to back down. 30 minutes later, Mr. Caldwell came out again. This time he was holding a piece of paper. She's agreed to everything. The withdrawal, the apology, and covering your legal costs. She wants this over as quickly as possible. I took the paper from him and read it. It was short. Camila had written that she was withdrawing her claim against the will and apologized for any distress caused during the process. It was cold and formal, but it was something. I looked up at Mr. Caldwell. I want it notarized, I said, and I want it today. He nodded. As he turned to go back inside, I stopped him one last time. Mr. Caldwell, I said, just so we're clear, if she tries anything else after this, if she starts spreading lies again or causes any problems, I won't hesitate to send everything I have to the rest of the family. Make sure she understands that. He studied me for a moment, then gave a small nod. I'll make sure she knows. After he left, I sat alone in the waiting area, staring at the wall. It was over, or at least this part of it was. But as I sat there, something still felt unfinished. Camila had agreed too quickly at the end. She was scared, yes, but I knew my sister. She didn't like losing, and she especially didn't like being forced to apologize. I had a feeling this wasn't truly finished. Not yet. I left the lawyer's office that afternoon feeling like I had just run a marathon. The signed and notarized apology was folded inside my folder. Camila had withdrawn her contest to the will. The house, the savings, and everything else our parents left behind was officially mine. On paper, I had won. But as I drove home through the quiet streets of Boise, I didn't feel like someone who had won. I felt empty. When I walked into my small house, I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and stood there for a long moment, staring at nothing. The silence felt heavier than usual. For months, this fight had been hanging over my head. Now that it was supposedly over, I didn't know what to do with myself. I made a cup of tea and sat at the table. I kept replaying the look on Camilla's face when she realized I had proof. The way her confident smile had disappeared. The way her own lawyer had started looking at her differently. Part of me felt satisfied, but another part of me couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly finished. Camilla had never been the type to accept defeat gracefully. She had always found a way to twist things in her favor. Agreeing to the apology so quickly felt off, like she was buying time. 2 days later, I found out I was right. It started with the phone call from our Aunt Linda. "Elena," she said, her voice careful. "I just got off the phone with Camilla. She told me you forced her to sign some kind of apology under threat. She said you were blackmailing her with private family documents." I closed my eyes. Of course.
She said you're trying to turn the whole family against her, Aunt Linda continued. She sounded very upset. She even said you might be planning to sell the house and cut everyone off. I took a slow breath before answering. Aunt Linda, did she also tell you that she was the one who filed to take the entire inheritance away from me? Or that she had been asking our father to change the will while Mom was still sick?
Well, she didn't mention that part, Aunt Linda admitted. I have the messages, I said calmly. I have bank records. I have everything. If you want to see the truth, I can show you. But I'm not going to keep defending myself every time she tells a new story. Aunt Linda was quiet for a few seconds. I'm sorry, Elena, she finally said. I didn't know it had gone that far. I'll talk to your other aunts and uncles. Just be careful. Camila seems really angry. After the call ended, I sat on the couch feeling a familiar heaviness settle in my chest. She was doing it again. Even after agreeing to withdraw the case and apologize, Camila was already spinning a new version of the story. She was painting herself as the victim and me as the villain. Again. I opened my laptop and checked the family group chat. Sure enough, there were already a few messages from distant relatives asking if everything was okay between me and Camila. Someone had clearly been talking. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I opened the folder where I had been keeping every document since this started. I added the new messages from our aunt. Then I created a new document, a clear, factual timeline of everything Camila had done since our parents died. I wasn't going to send it yet, but I was done being passive. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. You really think you won? Enjoy the house while you can. This isn't over. I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't signed, but I knew exactly who it was from. Camila was still playing games. The next morning, I called Mr. Caldwell, Camila's lawyer. He sounded tired when he answered. Ms. Morales, I assume you're calling about your sister. She's already telling people I blackmailed her, and I received a threatening message last night. I want this to stop. Mr. Caldwell sighed. I advised her to leave things alone, but she's emotional right now. She feels like she was forced into signing that apology. She was forced because she was trying to steal from me, I said flatly. If she continues spreading lies or contacting me, I will send every document I have to the entire family, and I will also consider taking legal action for harassment. There was a long pause. I'll speak with her. Again. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision. I was done waiting for Camila to decide when this was over. I opened my laptop and started typing an email, not to the whole family yet, but to the 3 people whose opinions actually mattered to me: our Aunt Linda, our Uncle Robert, and our cousin Sophia. I attached the key documents, the text messages, the bank transfers, the email where Camila was already trying to sell the house before our parents were even buried. I kept the email short and factual. Then I saved it in my drafts. I didn't send it yet, but I knew I would. Then she hung up. I sat there in the dark living room, my heart beating faster than usual. For the first time, I felt genuinely scared. Camila had always been calculating. If she was this angry, she might actually try to do something worse. The next morning, I received an email from Mr. Caldwell, Camila's lawyer. He wrote that my sister was now considering filing a defamation lawsuit against me for sending the documents to the family. He said she believed I had damaged her reputation and wanted compensation. I read the email twice. Then I forwarded it to my own lawyer, the one I had finally hired after the mediation. 2 days later, my lawyer called me. Elena, she said, I've reviewed everything. The documents you have are strong. If Camila files a defamation suit, we can countersue for harassment and emotional distress. We also have enough evidence to report her to the bar if she tries anything unethical.
I felt a strange sense of calm. For months, I had been the one on the defensive. Now the situation had flipped. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and paper. I wrote down everything that had happened since our parents died. Every lie, every threat, every manipulation. I organized it clearly, like I was preparing for war, because that's what this had become. Camilla wasn't going to stop. She had already shown that. So I decided I wasn't going to either. If she wanted to fight, I would fight back harder. But this time, I wouldn't be doing it alone. The defamation threat didn't last long. 2 days after Mr. Caldwell sent that email, my lawyer called me with an update. Camilla had withdrawn the idea of suing me. According to her own lawyer, she realized that if the case went to court, all the documents I had would become public record, including the text messages where she pressured our father to change the will while our mother was dying. She couldn't risk that. Instead, she tried one last move. She called Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert directly, crying on the phone and claiming I had forged the documents. She said I was trying to steal the entire inheritance and turn the family against her. She even offered to split everything fairly if they convinced me to drop everything. Aunt Linda later told me she had never heard Camilla sound so desperate. I told her I had already seen the messages with my own eyes, Aunt Linda said. She went quiet after that. Then she started saying the messages were taken out of context. I hung up on her. That was the moment Camilla's lies finally started collapsing around her. Over the next 2 weeks, more family members reached out to me. Some were angry at Camilla. Some were disappointed. A few simply said they didn't want to get involved. But the ones whose opinions mattered had seen the truth. Camilla had gone from being seen as the successful, put-together daughter to someone who had tried to manipulate our dying parents for money. Her reputation inside the family was destroyed. She stopped calling me after that. The threatening messages also stopped. It was as if she had finally realized she had no moves left. But the consequences didn't end there. 3 weeks later, I received a message from one of Camilla's old coworkers. We weren't close.
I hadn't sent anything to her company. I hadn't even considered it. But someone had. Whether it was another family member who was disgusted by what she did, or someone else who had seen the documents, I didn't know. And I didn't ask. For the first time, Camilla was facing real consequences outside of just our family. Her professional reputation had taken a hit. The same charm and confidence she had used to mock me in the lawyer's office was no longer protecting her. A month later, I received one final message from her. It came from yet another new number. I hope you're happy. You've ruined my life. I lost my job. Half the family won't speak to me. Was it worth it? I read it twice. Then I replied with only 4 words. You did this to yourself. I blocked the number immediately after. That was the last time I heard from her. 6 months have passed since then. I still live in the house our parents left me. I've made small changes, painted the living room, planted flowers in the backyard, and finally replaced the old curtains. It feels like mine now. I still teach at the same elementary school. Some days are hard, but I no longer feel like I'm barely surviving. I've started saving again. I even took a short trip to the coast last month with 2 of my coworkers. Camilla never reached out again. From what I've heard through distant relatives, she moved to a different city. She's keeping a low profile. Most of the family has stopped talking about her. The few who still do only mention her with disappointment. I don't feel joy when I think about that, but I also don't feel guilty. For years, I had been the quiet sister who stayed behind, took care of our parents, and tried to keep the peace. Camilla had used that against me. She had laughed at me when she thought I had nothing left to fight with. She had tried to take everything, including my dignity. In the end, she lost far more than I ever did. If you've ever been underestimated, mocked, or betrayed by someone who thought you were too weak to fight back, Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. You know, after everything that happens, I've learned something important. Sometimes the people who laugh at you when you have no lawyer are the same ones who panic the moment you show them you have the truth. I didn't need to destroy Camila. She destroyed herself the moment she decided that taking everything from me was worth more than our family. I simply refused to stay quiet while she tried. And in doing so, I got back not just the house and the inheritance, but something much more valuable: my peace. And the knowledge that I will never again let anyone make me feel small for protecting what's mine.